All right, guys, we just want to welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are at 2024 preview and prediction for the Louisville Cardinals. Coaching staff remains the same. Jeff and Brian Brom as the lead mans that is, and then Rod English as the defensive coordinator, second year in the role for him. Coming off their first ever ACC championship game appearance, disappointing effort in the Holiday Bowl against USC to end the season. Looking at this offense, Nick, last year when they had Jack Plummer, we talked about how this guy, with his experience in the system, and his experience as a college football player in general would be beneficial for Louisville. But when it comes to the end of the season, he just forgot how to play football. He completed less than 40%, had a horrible red zone pick, lost 16-6 against an FSU team that literally had no offense at all. I mean, it was a disaster. How he ended his career, really. At times, though, Jack Plummer is really good for this offense, and that's why it's kind of controversial maybe to say that it's maybe not a major loss. You replace him with a guy I think kind of similar in Tyler Shao. Player's an accurate passer, does well in RPO situations, has good football IQ, so he's pretty optimal in reading defenses, good athlete. He's never really been that good of a player, though, in my opinion, or really been healthy. What's the vision here with Tyler Shao, Nick, and what was your opinion on Jack Plummer, or at least how he ended his career?
Jack Plummer certainly disappointed me, I thought, as a veteran player in college football who's been around different programs, fit into good systems, had some good years at Cal. I thought he'd be a really good fit for this Louisville offense. You and I were both very excited for it, but we saw red flags early on week one against Georgia Tech. I believe it was on a Friday night where they struggled against the Yellow Jackets in Atlanta, and they really did not look good at all on offense. And that was, you and I were texting each other that game. Red flags are starting to fly about what that offense would look like as they struggled in that game in week one for the early on in the season. That was a very disappointing start for them, and it didn't work out great. Plummer had some issues throughout the season. 12 picks was a big problem for him. He did, complete 64% of his passes, 3,200 yards and 21 touchdowns, but 12 picks was not great. Made a lot of careless throws, did not look comfortable. And now you plug in Tyler Shao, who I'm not entirely sure if he's going to be much better. He's had a long career bouncing around different programs at this point in time, and he finds another home here at the Louisville Cardinals. He previously at Oregon, previously at Texas Tech. Got injured at both schools, had some troubles at Texas Tech, looked like he could have a decent year before getting hurt. I don't know if he's going to be a good quarterback to lead this offense. I think the system helps him, certainly. I think that will plug him into the system, and he could be okay based off some of the pieces he has around him and, developing, playing in that system. But this is a gamble. I think this is a tough gamble. I feel like you could have gone and got a better quarterback out of the portal if you're Louisville. I think they have to go recruit a better quarterback out of high school as well. Trying to plug and play different quarterbacks from the portal, I don't think is a sustainable setup down there in Kentucky. I think they got to figure something out soon, because if they don't, they're going to continue to, cap their ceiling in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, a bit of a counterpoint here is, that leads us to the backup and Pierce Clarkston, a guy that is a redshirt freshman who was a four-star from St. John Bosco in California, had a great career at that level, good dual-threat player, and I think this guy might be the future, and I think after about 4 or 5 games, he will be the starter and probably will hold that position for the rest of the season. You also got Harrison Bailey and Brady Allen behind them if need be. So it's a bit of a deep room, I guess, in terms of options, but I think Clarkson here, Nick, he's going to end up being the starter, and I think this team will have some good success. Even though he'll have some hiccups, I think he's going to be the guy moving forward who should be the quarterback.
I think he should be this quarterback moving forward. I think he's a guy that has high upside, like you said, a 4-star coming out of high school. And from California, I totally blanked on the fact that he was part of this roster, but he is this guy that has a lot of potential that you could plug in the future and get something done. I do think they got to make the switch, sooner rather than later. Let this kid get the opportunity to go out there and see what he can do.
Certainly definitely want to see how Shao will do, though, in this system. But again, I think Clarkson should be the starter at some point in the season. Looking at the running back room, Isaac Guerrero from Wisconsin ended up being far better than I thought he ever could have been. And of course, Jawar Jordan was elite as well. Don Chaney, coming off his best career season with Miami, had nearly 500 yards, a pure downhill runner of power and tenacity, like the short area quickness as well. Maurice Turner, a nice, well-rounded back, runs between the tackles well, has nice balance, should see lots of time this fall. Keon Brown only played one game versus Murray State and was good there. Has exceptional vision, a couple true freshmen behind them. Solid room here, lots of production that has to be replaced, though, and I think this run game will be just fine. I think Turner is eventually going to work his way to the top of the depth chart. A couple of guys a lot of people might not be familiar with in terms of name value, Nick, and guys like Pierce Clarkston, Maurice Turner at running back, but you're looking at these younger guys, and I think they're going to make some big strides this year. Turner being a junior, not seeing the field all that much, but I think he has the versatility they're looking for.
I think Turner is a fantastic option they could have in this backfield. 284 yards rushing for him, 4.6 yards per carry, and 1 score last year. So limited touches, about 62 attempts for him. He's a guy that I want to see more of him. I think he's a good player that they plug in there. Don Chaney as well is a solid add for Miami. I want to see what he can look like. He's a decent player that can have some room to grow in this system. Keyshawn Brown as well. Only played a 1 game last year, but he has some high upside. He did score in that 1 game against Murray State on his 11 touches. So I think that's a guy that has some high upside. This running back room, yes, it has to replace a ton of production, and that certainly does concern me, but I do think there are some solid little pieces you can plug in here.
Now you look at the wide receiver room. Chris Bell, the lone returnee among the top 5 pass catchers last season. Pure outside wide receiver, 6'2", 225, will be the leader in this room. Ja'Cory Brooks, a former 5-star physical pass catcher, fell out of favor at Alabama after having an impressive debut season. He's looking to get back on track. Jaden Thompson was beat up all year long, but should be a reliable reserve. Jimmy Callaway from Tennessee had a good season last year for the Cards. Should see an increased workload this year. Kataris Hicks looking good in the spring. Antonio Meeks arrives from D2. Pretty good room here, and of course they're going to be spearheaded by Colin Lacey coming over from South Alabama. Great versatility, can play outside, but mainly in the slot. Good intermediate weapon with good ball tracking and yards after catch. Doesn't quite have the Jamari Thrash type of speed, but still has impressive burst nonetheless. Runs a great slot fade as well. Obviously, Thrash last year came over from a group of 5 school. Lacey does the same, Nick, and he's going to be the leading receiver, much like Thrash was a season ago, and he's going to highly impress in this new conference.
They're going to rely on Lacey a lot this year, and I think I don't blame them. He comes over from South Alabama where he had a productive season in the slot, a really good, versatile player, really solid speed in that slot. I think he's a really good add for this team. Lacey can do a whole lot here, I think, in this offense. You bring back Chris Bell, who had 407 yards receiving, 14 yards per grab, and 2 scores. Jimmy Callaway also returns. He had 242 yards receiving on 20 grabs with 12.1 yards per grab, and Jaden Thompson also returns. He had a touchdown on his 12 grabs last year, so a little bit of production there at that wide receiver. Ja'Cory Brooks is a good add from Alabama, fell out of favor, but still an incredibly talented player that made some great moments in a Crimson Tide uniform. I think this is a wide receiving room that, yes, it does have to replace a lot of different talented players. Certainly looking at Coleman and Thrash, who are 2 players they lost, but I think they've made some decent work in the portal. I think Brooks and Lacey are 2 really good adds that you're going to plug in and play here.
Now you look at a couple tight ends they added as well. Mark Redmond, 6'6", 255, was the leading pass catcher for San Diego State. Pretty adequate blocker as well. Jaleel Skinner, a thinner frame guy at 210, but a 6'5" of versatility, has long strides and good catch radius. So I think this is a nice pass catching group they have here. You look at the offensive line, Monroe Mills, you already know they paid up big to get him, from Texas Tech. Played lots of snaps, improved big time in pass blocking this past year, 6'6", 315. Michael Gonzalez was very good at left guard. He'll return for his 3rd straight season as a starter. Renato Brown and Austin Collins both played 290-plus snaps at right guard. Will continue that battle for the starting role. Both being average, but overall were good in pass protection. The latter playing the most snaps by far, though, in Collins. Pete Nigra really improved his play this past season, starting the past 2 seasons at NIU as the center, allowing no sacks in his career to this point at 6'4", 300 pounds. Fellow transfer Victor Cutler will be his backup, but has been no good in his career. Right tackle will be contested by Jonathan Mendoza, who played 1,500 snaps and 3 yards at Yale. And Rasheed Miller, who was a pretty average player for Georgia Southern. What do you make of this offensive line, Nick? Because they certainly went out and made some nice additions, especially at center and at left tackle.
They made a lot of moves in the portal, adding in different players. Mills is a good add at left tackle, a guy that I think you can plug in and really get a lot of him from Texas Tech. Also played with Tyler Schaus, so there's some continuity there. I think Niger is a really good add at center, a guy that's got some good experience. Mendoza coming over from the FCS level, playing at Yale, is a really interesting add. A guy from the Ivy League, I think it's a solid add at right tackle. He'll be, battling with a few different pieces. I think Renato Brown and Austin Collins are 2 good returning pieces. I think Collins will probably get the start at right guard, although some people are tipping Brown right now. Michael Gonzalez at left guard, another guy that has some veteran experience, while Lance Robinson behind him is also a guy with some veteran experience. I don't love plugging different offensive line pieces, and I don't like going to having majority of your offensive line being fresh from the portal. I hate that lack of continuity, but I do think these are some better adds. I just am a little cautious about that, because when you plug in so many different guys from different schools on the offensive line, I think that can certainly damage your unit.
Look at the offensive verdict. The Cards unit will be good as long as Brum's calling the plays. I think the running back room will perform well enough, and the wide receiver room will showcase versatility in terms of production. I'm not a fan of Tyler Shedd one bit, though, and I think if the longer he stays on the field, the more we may see some issues and stagnantness. And I think we will see Pierce Clarkson play a good bit in effort to secure in the future. Overall, a good decrease in efficiency from last season, though, is expected. Look at the defensive side of the ball. This unit certainly performed better than we expected. thought it'd be a good defense, but I think they were borderline, maybe great, you could say. They just were very tough, especially against the run. They returned 7 starters, added 15 more people in the portal, lost 11 guys. They're led by star Ashton Gelati. He has great bend off the edge, burst, and power. His backup, Raymond Perrier, wasn't bad as an average player who'll need to keep improving versus the run. Miles Jernigan, a solid add from Cal. Tremel Logan was a good run defender for USF. Richard Kinley played 1,400 snaps as a pretty average player from Middle Tennessee. Overall, it's a revamped edge group of a good, bit of versatility and vastly experienced players. The pass rush is iffy right now, but in terms of being stout versus the run, that seems imminent. Ford Griffin from Harvard kicks off the interior D-line. He was an elite run defender, a player with great strength and some athletic ability. Desmond Tell, a good asset, 6'1", 290, who played well during the year. Jared Dawson, 6'2", 305. There's some nice pass rushing upside. I was a big fan of Jordan Gerard, a real good run defender at his time at FIU. Great chance here for his talents to shine, as FIU was never great against the run, but he certainly helped them out when he was on the field, and now he's going to be around other very good football players. They're also going to get back Mason Reiger, who I thought showcased great motor and some nice power. Great unit here, Nick. This is an incredibly underrated defensive line that was very deep a season ago. They didn't crack really ever against the run. I mean, they didn't allow a single game of 170-plus yards all season long. Well, I guess against Georgia Tech they did with 175. That was it, though, Nick. They were very stout against the run. I expect it to continue.
Underrated unit that has some seriously talented players, and it starts with Gelati, who I think is an incredible player, a really underrated player in this conference. 45 total tackles, 14.5 tackles for loss, 11 sacks for him, plus 3 forced fumbles, one of those he recovered. Good numbers there. Raymond Perrier as well, 21 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, or 4 sacks, and a pick for him. Desmond Tell, 20 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him. Jared Dawson, 14 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Incredible returning production in terms of sacks. They get in the backfield. That's a lot of sacks I just rattled off there, around 20 to 25 sacks. Really good numbers. They added some good pieces. I think Gerard, the added defensive tackle, if he can find some playing time this year, really solid player as well. I think Richard Keenley, like you alluded to, is a good player that this defense picked up. They made some nice portal work here, added some players. Miles Jernigan's not a bad add at all from Cal either. I think he could be involved potentially in different versatile roles. I like what this front line could do here. This defensive line is a very strong unit with some nice pass rushing.
Look at the middle of this defense. Stanquan Clark was good in his brief appearances and destined for a breakout season in 24. TJ Quinn was good versus the run. Will step up as an immense leader this fall at middle linebacker. Benjamin Perry will anchor down the star position as a converted safety at about 205 pounds. Looked good in his near 600 snaps, especially versus the run. Durante Davis only saw a few reps for Texas A&M last year. He was a good starter for Jackson State back in 22, though. Also picked up Dan Foster from Texas State. Was a pretty lackluster player, but was a starter. Antonio Watts was real good in his sophomore season, destined for a bigger role in some capacity. Good group overall, no standout, no real high-end talent, but they can collectively be a strong group, I think, against the run. Quinn, I think, is the best guy you have here. Obviously, the returning leading tackler with 92 stops. They lost Jalen Alderman in the portal, who's the 4th leading tackler, to Miami. So this is an interesting room here, Nick. I certainly think they have a little bit of inexperience, but I think overall they'll collectively play well.
Quinn is a really solid returning player. Obviously, your top returning tackler, 92 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, plus a pick and 2 pass breakups. Good numbers there. He's a really solid player, a nice leader for this team. Benjamin Perry, 56 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 4 pass breakups. Good numbers there as well. Antonio Watts, 30 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 1 sack for him. Good numbers as well. I think he's a solid player than Stanquan Clark. I think he's going to step up this year and really hit those high levels. 15 total tackles, 2 tackles for a loss for him in limited appearances. I like what they have in this middle of this defense as well. And this defense so far, this front part of this defense is a really strong physical unit that produce a lot of tackles, a nice amount of tackles for loss as well.
You look at a secondary that was quite impressive, and they returned Quincy Riley. He was one of the nation's best at his position of cornerback last fall. Has great speed and instincts. I love the addition of Corey Thornton from UCF, a player has good size of 6'1", 190, physical press man corner. Ball skills took a massive step forward this past year. Was much better in man than zone. Devon Nicholson, also a pretty good addition. A good corner for Illinois the past 2 seasons. Tayon Holloway was no good for North Carolina last year. He's going to occupy a backup role. Safety group has good experience. Devin Neal, a quality player, will likely share time with MJ Griffin. Both will be adequate starters, although the latter and Griffin didn't play last season. Is a veteran, though. They added Tamari and McDonald, who's fresh off 2 good seasons for Tennessee. Blake Ruffin was a really good player for Eastern Illinois. And then Dave McCullough from Oklahoma. And then returned D'Angelo Hutchinson, who saw a few snaps last year. Good secondary top to bottom. Plenty of depth, some stout players. Obviously, they do lose, a very key player in guys like Jarvis Brownlee and Cameron Kelly. But overall, this is a very good secondary, Nick. I don't expect them to crack very often. What do you make of it? And I think getting Griffin back in the secondary is also helpful.
There's some solid pieces here that they get back. I think Griffin's a good player to get back. Hopefully he's fully healthy. Devin Neal, 74 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 4 picks, 6 pass breakups. From Quincy Riley, 12 pass breakups. Really good numbers there. 3 interceptions, 49 total tackles. D'Angelo Hutchinson was a rotational piece with 5 total tackles as well. They added some pieces in Thornton from the portal, who I think could be okay. Trevon Nicholson as well out of the portal at left cornerback could be a decent player that gets rotational time. This unit's definitely the weaker part of the defense for me. I think the front part of the defense is much better, but I do think there is some talented pieces here. And this is not a bad unit. They were not bad against the pass last year. I think they'll still be in a similar position.
Look at the verdict for the Cards D. They were shockingly a pretty much elite unit last season. Be in that same category once again with the return of great players at all levels. The portal work has been very impressive, and it allows them to have good depth. But players who are quality, all around, the front seven's going to be good against the run. Secondary may even take a step forward. So this is a very good defense. If anything, you expect a Brom team to lead with offense, and I think this year they might be more reliant on this D. So I think that's certainly something that's important for the Cards. Looking at the prediction here, like I just alluded to, the Louisville defense will be good like it was last year. The tough efforts versus the run. Secondary that's capable of consistently performing at a high level. Only issue here is the offense isn't very exciting on paper. I think they have quality players that will be able to collectively produce at a good rate. But Shao isn't a good QB, and I think it'll cost them during the year. Again, if they start Clarkson, though, I think they'll have more upside. I think early on in the season, they're going to be able to rip off some wins. Maybe you see Shao struggle against Georgia Tech, and if he doesn't, he's likely going to struggle in South Bend, Nick. And I think that's when the quarterback change happens and you start to see better offense. Everyone's picking Miami to beat them for some reason. I mean, this is a team they were very resilient against last year on the road, and now they're hosting them. So I think that's going to be a game where it's going to be a bit of a trap game for the Hurricanes. Louisville wins that one as a kind of statement on this season. It's going to be an 8-4 year for me. I see them losing all the games on the road, though, versus some very tough opponents. Ceiling for this team, probably not ACC championship game appearance for a second year in a row, but I certainly think they can cause some damage.
I have this team at 9-3. This is a really solid team with a great offense that has some good pieces they're plugging in. I think the quarterback change will happen at some point. If not, I still think they'll be just fine. I think the one game that they pick off compared to you is I have them beating Boston College on the road. I do think they'll beat Miami as well. They'll lose to Notre Dame, Clemson, Kentucky, 3 really good teams, one from the ACC, one independent, and one from the SEC. Really tough road trips for all 3 of those games. Certainly a rivalry of Kentucky that has gone back and forth in recent years, as well as a trip to Clemson is never easy, and South Bend is a very tough place to play as well. I like what the defense can do. I think the front seven's phenomenal. The secondary worries me a little bit, but I do think they have enough talent to get the job done. I like the adds at running back. I think they've brought in enough pieces, as well as have depth from previous years. They can step out the wide receiver room. They've added some good pieces, mainly in Ja'Cory Brooks, as well as the star wide receiver they brought in from South Alabama, Colin Lacey. So 2 good adds from the state of Alabama in terms of schools. I like the schedule, pretty straightforward, cut and dry, nice home draws. Certainly some tougher road draws, but I think that in general, a 9-3 season will still be pretty solid in Cardinal country. It's good steps in the right direction for Jeff Brom and co.
Yeah, Brom's been a bit of a portal warrior as well, Nick. Another fun episode here. We got to break down. This will be an interesting team to watch all year long, especially if they can shake things up against, maybe a Notre Dame or a Clemson. Maybe even Kentucky, I think, will be pretty good. So they have opportunities to go on the road to make a statement. Not quite sure I'm ready to pull the trigger just yet. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me.
Looking forward to watching this team in this season.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.